This first guest, man, he is one of the coolest guys on the Bears beat, man. He is the host of the Nicholas Moreano show. You got my guy Nicholas Moreano in the house, man, here on I'm Not Gonna Hold You. You can follow him at Nicholas Moreano on all social media platforms. Nick, man, glad to have you on, brother. How you feeling?
I'm doing well, you guys. I was laughing in the background there from your previous discussion there. No, I'm glad to be here. Yeah, should be fun.
My people go.
Yeah, this is a ridiculous television show. We have a disclaimer at the beginning. Like for any of our media peers, blame me. Don't blame anybody else on this show for what is said on here, man. But
I know you can blame me. You
this.
can blame me. I'm grown. I'm a man.
So
I'm 40. No,
I'm a man. I'm 40. But anyway, man, glad to have you on, bro, man. You've been killing it on the work, man. You killing it all the time, man. But definitely been seeing like an uptick since you're going back to the indie grind, man. Before we get into the question I have for you, just tell me what it's been like, you know what I'm saying, having your own show and, really like kind of like, doing your own thing fully. Of course, I know you're doing some stuff with the homies at the Bigs, but what it's been like, you know what I'm saying, like post CHGO and everything you've been doing.
Yeah, I think it's been a good opportunity for me to just kind of dive into a lot of things that maybe I wouldn't have had my full hands on from a production standpoint, but learning how to do like graphics and things like that. But like, I get to host my own show, so I get to say what I want, do what I want, and do it the way I want to do things. So it has been a kind of like a blessing in disguise when you do, move on, when I did move on from my previous job. So it's been cool. And it's been nice to see the engagement, like numbers have been growing, things like that, having like a professional looking intro and stuff like that I just didn't have previous to this. So it's nice to have my own brand, but yeah, continue to build that up, but it's been a lot of fun.
Definitely, man. It's been definitely dope to watch everything you've been putting out, man. It's been definitely great to see. But let's talk Bears, man. That's what we all here for. Been a busy off season. I feel like it's been 5 years since the last game we all covered with so much stuff going on. New head coach Ben Johnson, bringing in these new players and things like that. Just tell me, like, what has your thoughts been on just the changes the Bears have made? I feel like we left the season with a lot of questions, more questions than answers coming into this offseason. But just a couple months in, it kind of feels like a new world a little bit for the Bears. Tell me, what's your thoughts on how these first couple months of 2025 has been?
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect way to kind of encapsulate how 2024 ended. There were so many questions still about this team and what they were going to do moving forward, only having 5 wins and ending with that victory over Green Bay. But since hiring Ben Johnson, you've also seen a bunch of moves that I think reflect what he wants in his football team. You're building up the trenches. You've completely revamped the entire offensive line. You've added some edge rushers as well. Grady Jarrett on the inside. So I think you're seeing just the change in influence that Ben Johnson had in Detroit and what they were good at, and then bringing it over here to Chicago. And honestly, something that the Bears realistically needed if they wanted to be competitive in 2025. So now there are a lot more answers on this team. Look, they've made the right moves. We got to still see it play out in the regular season if those moves translate to victories, but you can't fault the Bears for how they've kind of approached this. They wanted to address the offensive line. They've done that. They've given themselves a chance to succeed going into next season for Caleb Williams by addressing left guard, center, and right guard. And then you did get some guys on the defensive line as well. And that doesn't mean that going into this upcoming draft that you can't still add to both those lines, but I do like the moves, and I see why the Bears made them, and it makes everything a little bit more flexible as they kind of enter 2025 draft and what they can possibly do with their picks.
Yeah, and then when you bring up the draft too, and I think you made a good point about we got to see all this plays out. I think that's the number one thing with the Bears. Last year, there was so much hype last offseason. Like, remember being at camp, seeing the Hard Knocks cameras and the whole draft, everything like that. But this year, you can fully say that, okay, they've done the right moves. And even if, let's just say, worst case scenario, it doesn't pan out, you can't get mad at Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren for not doing what they're supposed to do compared to other years and things like that. So when we go into the draft, I think, trading for Joe Tooney and, Jackson and, going out there signing a center and all these other things they've done, it really makes it best player available for the Bears. You know, they can trade up, they trade down. What do you think the Bears should aim for specifically at pick 10?
I'm still a firm believer of still upgrading those trenches, and whether that is on the offensive or defensive line. I look at it this way, you guys, when obviously the Bears have done made some good additions, both sides there. But when I look at, and I'll always compare teams right now to the Philadelphia Eagles because they're at the mountaintop. They've shown what the blueprint is for their team. They always have a plethora of guys coming in and out on the defensive line in waves. And that was something that Ryan Poles, discussed not too long ago at Hallis Hall when Dio Dengbo was being introduced. He also introduced the idea of having waves on the defensive line. So that's where I think the Bears end up going if they stay at pick 10, picking the best defensive lineman there. But I wouldn't be opposed to, like, if let's say a guy from Will Campbell, the LSU tackle, who, maybe there are some questions about arm length. Can he actually play tackle? Could he also probably play guard in the NFL? Definitely. But I'm all for trying to upgrade and still continue to upgrade those lines, even if, like, I know there's a lot of Bears fans wanting or liking the idea of Ashton Jeanty. And you know what? I'm open to that discussion. I just still believe that his team isn't necessarily done because of the recent additions they've made. You bought those additions. There's no homegrown talent outside maybe of Darnell Wright right now and Jervon Dexter on the line. So I just think that they could still continue to find those guys that they draft, that they can continue to develop, that can still be a part of this team moving forward, because Joe Thuney, 32 years old, Grady Jarrett's going to be 32 in April. They're not going to be here for that much longer than what they've just initially signed for. So go find some guys that can fill in later as, the years kind of progress here.
And I think, too,
go ahead.
My bad, man. And I think, too, that this free agency shows you that you got to have homegrown guys. And that's probably why it wasn't the deepest free agent pool, because everybody was re-signing their guys. And I definitely think that's something that they need to do. Go ahead, Ben.
So what about this backup quarterback situation? Like, you got Bajent back there, or have been back there. But a lot of people, even last year, was talking about why do we not have a vet back there to help out Caleb? Is now the time to get a vet back there to help out, or you think we're good where we're at?
I wouldn't be opposed to that idea. I think anytime you can have somebody with kind of that veteran presence that's been around the NFL, just knows, one, how to understand in terms of game planning, how you're going to go about your week, and it's just gone through this experience for a number of years. I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. And for the Bears, like how they approached it last season, obviously having Tyson Bagent and Caleb Williams is a lot of almost like learning on the fly. And Caleb won as soon as he was drafted, he was basically anointed the job, which, look, I don't have an issue with that. He is a number 1 overall pick, a lot of talent, but it is good to, I think, have somebody in the room that, has gone through this more than a Tyson Bagent has. And, Tyson Bagent, I think, someone that has developed, but it's just nice to have that veteran presence. A lot of these other rooms right now for the Bears, they do have that outside the quarterback room. And, I know there's obviously new people in place there, new coaches, and maybe that can fill the spot there. But just having an actual player in there that can share a tip or two with Caleb and even Tyson, I'm not opposed to that at all. So if the Bears were to bring in a veteran quarterback that has been through a couple of systems, I don't see anything wrong with that. That's not that you're saying that he's challenging Caleb or even Tyson at the job. Just somebody to have on the roster that, obviously has played the position and knows a thing or two about being a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, you're right. That backup position is important. But, as we all know, everybody's here to see number 18, Caleb Williams. So with all the additions we made along the offensive line, where are your expectations for Caleb? And what do you think we should see out of our quarterback coming year 2? Is it one of those things where we have to, the Bears fans, we hate hearing this, but give it time to let that new offensive line gel? Or is this something where we should see him begin to continue to take that next step that we expect him to take?
I think if you're a Bears fan, you should have high expectations for what Caleb Williams should be able to do, especially given all the additions. And I think the biggest thing you're going to see from Caleb, and hopefully as he's learning Ben Johnson's offense and learning the language and everything that comes with it, just the understanding of like the timing in the NFL. I think when you look at the 68 sacks that he took, yes, a bunch can be put on the offensive line that was previously in place last season. But there are also a lot of those sacks where you look at Caleb, where what I was kind of seeing on film is like he's trying to wait for something to develop downfield when it's not there to be had in the first place, based on coverage, based on the route concepts. Like, you want to just know that if something's not there, you can take your check down. And I think with Ben Johnson, his offense, and with the line that's going to be in place, Caleb's going to get to those decisions a little bit quicker. And when he's going to get to those decisions quicker, you're ahead of the chains instead of being behind them because you took a negative play or even an incomplete pass. So I think that should be one of the biggest areas of improvement in Caleb Williams' game. And for Ben Johnson, like, this is almost a new kind of experiment for him because he's never had a quarterback quite like him who can make his own plays, extend plays. Jared Goff's a great quarterback in the pocket, but his game does not exceed the pocket. So I just think that the biggest area you're going to see is just, I think, Caleb being a quicker processor, get to those check downs, and then he can go home run hitting on some of those deeper plays. But I do have high expectations for Caleb. He does have the weapons around him, and now he has the line. And with that, I think you should see some pretty good things from number 18.
And that's why I'm excited about the moves they made in line, because last year, in the flashes that he did have time to throw the ball, he was great. And I think that's what you saw too in that Green Bay game, that winning drive. He had good protection. Now I want to talk about Ben Johnson. I think something I've read that I've noticed, and listen, I've been covering the Bears since 2021 full time, since 2022. All the camps that I've been at during the Matt Eberflus time, they haven't really been too high intense. I feel like this is something we've talked about, Nick, at camp sometime. Like, this wasn't as high intensity as we thought it should be. What's some things that you're going to be looking for from Ben Johnson's first camp? Because he said last week, like, it's not supposed to be easy. It's going to be tough. Woo, woo, woo. What is some things that you need to see from the way he conducts camp this year?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think just given, how Ben Johnson's been kind of talking about these things, like you said, not being easy, you want to see some physicality in these camps. Like, obviously they don't have as many days in the pads, or, there's certain times off that you got to take throughout camp. But I think when you hear Grady Jarrett and how he was talking about it, and he looked over at the new offensive lineman in Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney, saying, you guys better be ready. Like, that intensity from the defense, I think, is going to be there because Grady is there, and that's going to matriculate down into the rest of the defense players. But Ben Johnson's offensive players need to be ready for that. So I want to see that physicality. I want to see these guys challenge each other. You want to see the DBs and wide receivers really go at it. And I think that's what training camp's for. You callous up, and you build each other up, and you make it tough. And if Ben Johnson is true to his word and how he's going to approach training camp, like the way he's approaching some of these press conferences, then that's going to make I think it's just a stronger football team, because we've seen too many times, time and time again, when the Bears go play some of these NFC North opponents, especially the Green Bay Packers, they're beaten in the trenches. I think that's a physicality thing. That's a mentality type of what you need to play that position. So I think from Ben Johnson, bring that physicality, establish that from the very beginning. And I'm sure he's doing that now, as he's kind of been acquainted with some of the players now, but that needs to be seen in this training camp. And I think if we see that could be a good indication of what could possibly come in this 2025 season.
And that's the other too, when we've seen the last couple of years that defense likes talking during camp. Like, they're really loud during camp. I'm even texting in the group chat sometimes during camp, like, hey, Jaquan and them really talking shit today. You know what I'm saying? So I want to see them bark back. You know what I'm saying? We saw a little bit of that last year from the offense, but I want to see it more, and hopefully with some new people that it'll go there. I want to talk about the wide receivers. I got a couple more for you before we get you about it. Last year, the way they used DJ Moore was very, very weird. And we talked about this. I feel like Sunday after Sunday in the press box, you heard my brother like, yo, they're not using him the right way. Use him like a running back a lot. We were reading body language. Is he happy? Is he not happy? Now you've got year 2 Rome. You've got 2 new receivers they brought in. Some speedy guys, some gadget guys. You've got Olamide Zacchaeus, who had a pretty solid year with Washington last year. And then they just picked up from Baltimore, Devin Duvernay. And he's going to be somebody who's going to be a kick returner as well. I think the key that we see here, the smaller guys who are really fast. something that, as good as Keenan's year was last year, he doesn't really have the speed that he once had. What do these two signings tell you about the way that Ben Johnson wants his wide receivers to go? And do you see this as a way to, without Keenan, to make this kind of a breakout season for Rome?
Yeah, no, I think when you're looking at those two additions, and Zacchaeus and Devin Duvernay, you just want field stretchers, guys that have that speed element to their game that will allow some of the plays to kind of work, underneath that. And so kind of going back to DJ really quick, one of their staple plays in Ben Johnson's offense is that deep 20-yard dig in the middle of the field. The Bears actually got burned on it because they had Jameson Williams on a deep post at Soldier Field, and that's where Jared Goff threw it. But what influenced that play was the dig route by St. Brown in the middle of the field that held the safety. Then you're able to go over the top because you have no safety help and hit Jameson Williams for an 82-yard touchdown. So I think when Ben Johnson's adding some of these speed elements now to his offense, that's what you're kind of creating, these mismatches for some of these defenders. You isolate one guy. Look, Ben Johnson's going to be able to isolate certain defenders in a defense and put them in a bind. When you get guys with speed, you have to respect it. And then when you have guys that can work over the middle like DJ Moore can, then you're possibly hitting a 20-yard play, if not the touchdown over the top. So I think that's what those two guys can create when they're given their opportunities on offense. But I think DJ Moore is prone to have a bounce back season as well, because even in 2023, when he was setting, career highs in yards, catches, and touchdowns, that play was a staple over the middle of the field. Let him get the yards after the catch. That's a big thing that Ben Johnson loves to do. And I could see the similarities between him and a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then for Rome Odunze, I think it's honestly a wild card for him, because that's a guy that can line up in the slot. He can line up out wide. And a lot of the plays that Keenan Allen was getting, like, that should go to Rome. Like, he's more than capable of being a guy that can operate and be successful in the slot. He's big enough to play the X outside. And, just from talking to him in the locker room throughout the year, he wants to be used in multiple different ways. So even on some of those jet sweeps, and I know he ended up fumbling a couple of them in the last matchup, I believe, against the Detroit Lions, but he does want to be utilized all over the field. So when you have a creative mind like Ben Johnson, just let loose and get creative with any way that you want to use a guy like Rome, because even though for what it was, like, I liked his rookie season behind two, good wide receivers in DJ and Keenan. Now with him being the number two, we should see, I would not be surprised if Rome gets to 1,000 receiving yards. That shouldn't be out of the question. And DJ should be right around there too. But I think Ben Johnson's finally getting the weapons he needs, and he could possibly add more in the draft that will allow him to operate this version of his offense in Chicago.
And you can tell they're very excited about it. When I got a chance to talk to Rome and DJ during Super Bowl week, they were there promoting Bounty, I was like, why they got these green jackets on? And shout out to Bounty. Bounty had a really good promotion at Super Bowl week. They handed out free chicken wings to everybody at Radio Row. It's like, hey, use a paper towel type thing. But they were really excited about the way that Ben Johnson is going to be using it. So I'm definitely excited to see that. Final question for you, man. This has been something that has been talked about kind of a little bit more on Bears Twitter. This is something I've been on since the moment Ben Johnson got signed. Do you think there's a place for Cole Kmet in this offense? Because there's been a lot of questions about Cole Kmet. I think Cole Kmet is a fine tight end. I don't think he's anything to get excited about. I think he's, in the words of Stringer Bell on the wire, he's like a 40-degree day. It's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's nothing over the top, but I think he can make plays. But with the fast offense that you got with Ben Johnson, the way he uses tight ends in Detroit, do you think there's a place for him to really make a big impact? Or do you think this is going to be something that they might trade him down the line? What's your thoughts on Cole Kmet in this offense?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a place for Cole Kmet. I will say, though, that he's not the route runner that, Ben Johnson previously had with Sam Laporta. But when you have a guy that I think is a well-rounded player, I think that's how you can describe Cole Kmet. He'll block for you. He'll obviously go out and pass, catch some passes. But for whatever reason last season, and actually there's a bunch of different reasons why last season didn't work offensively, but I think you should see a better output for Cole Kmet, because I think Ben Johnson's just going to see a better vision for what his strengths are as a football player. And, when you have the size that Cole Kmet does have, like, I would like to see some of those one-on-one opportunities in the red zone. It's not like you need to be the greatest route runner to get up. Just body somebody out, box them out like you're a basketball player on a smaller safeties, things like that. But I just think with Ben Johnson's creativity, and I don't, it doesn't even take that much creativity to get a guy like that open. If you have the offense flowing one way with play action because you're in 12 personnel, you have your 2 tight ends on the field, and you're having the defense flow one way, all it takes is that one tight end to leak out the other direction to gain a quick, however many yards. Like, it doesn't have to, like, it's creativity, but it's also some of the basic stuff that you can do in the game. And I think that Ben Johnson's going to realize that, knowing that he does have a guy like Cole Kmet that when he's thrown a pass, he's usually catching it. The problem was that he just didn't get the targets or, the targets necessary to really capitalize on that catch production. So I think there is a place, but this is entering year 3 of his new deal.
Yep.
I would have to see how much like the guarantees are after this. And, I know there's a lot of Bears fans like speculating that 10th pick with a guy like Tyler Warren from Penn State. Like, if you were to draft him, I think that kind of lets you know, at least for this season, they can complement each other. But beyond that, like, there's no guarantees. But to answer your question, there is a place for Cole Kmet in Ben Johnson's offense. As for the future, I think we got to wait and see on that, but I want to see what Ben Johnson can do in this year with Cole, and then we can kind of have that discussion down the road.
Yeah, and I think like his contract makes it real interesting. Like you just said, like we're gonna look at what are some of the guarantees and things like that that's gonna look forward going forward, man. So, Nick, man, always great to talk to you, man. Great to have you on. Let them know where they can follow you at and everything you've got going on.
Yeah, no, appreciate you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun. You can just follow me on Twitter at Nicholas Moreano, and then doing stuff on YouTube, the Nicholas Moreano Show. So if you just type that in, I'm sure you'll find me. And also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. So anywhere where you can find your podcast, I'm also on there. But most of my stuff's gonna be posted on Twitter, and then if you click on there, you'll be able to find the rest of my content.
So cool. Triple double hat trick, I know the code too. Ice trade, go for trade, yeah, we cold too. Getting paper on these player haters, old news. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you. Money on the other line, so I'm not gonna hold you. Money on the other line, so I'm not